Hello and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. I'm Frank Rausen Pereira. This is FRP Explains. And since you're here, I would like to thank you for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. Do follow our social media handles for all the latest updates, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs a daily Big Picture quiz. Please do participate by going through the description in Big Picture videos. Here are the UPI IDs for those of you who would like to come forward and contribute. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. So do continue to show your love and support. I need it now more so than ever. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of this video. Please go through it. Now on to the discussion. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma last week appealed to Muslims of the state to adopt a decent family planning policy for population control. Himanta Biswa Sharma, who completed his first month as the Chief Minister in Assam, recently has said that the population is the root cause of every social menace, and if that is controlled, many issues will automatically be resolved. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze the issue of population control and demographic dividend. Joining me on the program today are Professor S.K. Singh, Department of Mathematical Demography and Statistics, IIPS, Professor Charan Singh, CEO, EGROW Foundation, and Ajay Shankar, former Secretary, DIPP, Government of India. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. All right, Professor S.K. Singh, let me start the program with you first. Let's understand the population that India has today. Let's understand the breakup first, and also if it is a boon or a bane.
Yeah, good afternoon to all of you. Historically, population control has been tried by most of developing countries under this impression that growing population after certain proportion with the given momentum is going to be a bane for any country. But over a period with age structural transition, many developing countries has recognized the fact that higher fertility, increasing young age population is going to provide dividend for the country, for economy, productivity as a whole. That is why the concept of demographic dividend emerged. But truly speaking, India is also experiencing demographic dividend, which is likely to continue up to 2036. But it is conditioned on certain things. One of the important is the educational quality, employability, skill development. Government of India has started various programs, but still, unfortunately, we are lagging on these qualitative aspects of young age population in our country. And that is why fruits of demographic dividends is not realized adequately in our country. We anticipate that new education policy 2020 is going to contribute significantly in that, provided that is implemented in right spirit. Government has approved that, but implementation has yet to come. That is why that's issue of future, not the current date. Especially during last 2 years, the country has been experiencing the pandemic situation, and in a country like ours, where over 90% people, like 90% labor force is employed in unorganized sectors, we are getting various scenarios of very high fluctuation in unemployment rates across the country. That's the real challenge. That is why IMF and other international agencies are commenting and looking forward to India, what strategy India should adopt to move from here. But fact
Absolutely.
is that our growing population with increasing young age is definitely going to give us the fruits of demographic dividend, which is likely to continue up to 2036.
Okay, points taken. Let me take the points that you're making forward with the other panelists as well. Um, Mr. Rajesh Shankar, let me come to you first. Let me sandwich you in between the two professors and, and get a comment out of you. Professor S.K. Singh was talking about fruits of demographic dividend. Are we on track really to get those fruits? Because we've seen several of the youngsters talking about unemployment rates have gone up as a result of the pandemic. The economy wasn't doing too well before the pandemic struck either. The pandemic has only worsened things for us. So how do you look at population control, population and the Indian economy from a demographic dividend point of view?
A bit of historical perspective is useful. Uh, the first one is that populations and countries have grown, plateaued, and in the advanced countries, they are declining. And they plateau not because governments follow policies of population control, but because of economic growth, economic development, and real progress in women's education, because that is the most clear correlation globally, that if women get educated, growth rates decline. In India itself, there are states where population growth is not taking place. They're already plateaued. The only country in the world which has used state power to do so was China, and they are regretting it. But the results may well have been similar even if they had not used such brute state power, but similar after another 10 years or so. So when we look at India, we have to look at two objectives. One is to get the poorer states or the backward states, Bihar, UP, etc., and focus there and get women educated and girls educated so that population growth stops. The second is that we need to be conscious of the demographic decline pattern, and we must encourage our young girls and young women that being mothers is a good thing, having two children is a good idea, and we should put in place social measures which make it possible to do so. So if you look at the United States, President Biden is now talking of childcare. His latest address to the Congress is of childcare and creche facilities, etc. So we have the opportunity of fixing this right today rather than waiting for demographic decline and then trying to do it. Now, coming to the issue of demographic dividend, I've been hearing it for 15 years. It's a myth. It has been a curse because we have failed to empower our young, give them skills and create high-paying, better quality jobs. It's a failure not only of the last 10 days, but the failure for the last 6 decades of economic development, that we have not been able to use our most valuable natural resource, which is young people with ambition, energy, and the willingness to work hard. We have not been able to create better paying modern jobs for them. So the demographic dividend, so-called, has been a demographic curse on us, will remain a curse till we succeed in creating better paying, better value-adding jobs for the young people in our country. So the worst thing that could happen to us, and according to some is quite likely, that in 2036 we'll be an aging society with a very low per capita income and not enough high-value creating jobs to sustain us in the decades thereafter.
Absolutely.
I'll rest here.
Professor Charan Singh, let me come to you now. You heard both the panelists before you, some very valid and good points made. How do you look at this aspect of the issue, and how do we turn things around by 2036? We've got about 15 years. Dr. Ajay Shankar has suggested that over the last 60 years, we've not done anything. Can the next 15 years be crucial, and can we do something over the next 15 years?
So I agree with both the panelists. They've made very valid points, but here are a few suggestions and a few points, observations that I would like to make. Firstly, I used to study in Australia way back 20, 25, 30 years ago. And there, they used to incentivize childbirth. And women who had more children, I think more than 4 children, she need not work. She would get so much of state patronage and support. And I knew people who had 6 or 7 or 8 children. In India too, the British used to reward women who had 12 children. Directly or indirectly, many countries have influenced the birthing pattern. Of course, China did it blatantly when 40 years ago it introduced a one-child policy. The point I'm trying to make is many countries have tried to influence the birth rate directly or indirectly, incentivizing in some way or the other. In our own country, during emergency, an attempt was made to control population. Let me now move fast forward and bring you to the research done by Angus Deaton, the Nobel laureate in economics. And Angus Deaton says, and that's not my view, it's Angus Deaton's view, and I'll tell you what my view is after that. Every child that comes on the planet has one mouth to feed, but two hands to work, a brain, and 2 feet to move. Then the point that Angus Deaton is making is, if conducive environment is provided on the planet and in your own country, you can be far more productive. Now, as an economist, if I have to grow, I need two things, labor and capital. Capital can be provided by the banking system as well as international markets. Labor can become very scarce. In our country, it is not, so we don't realize it. But in European countries where women have stopped producing children and child per women is less than 1, in some countries 0.7, and not yesterday, for decades, they are realizing that population is important. In my last visit to Germany about 2 years ago, they didn't have Germans to drive their own trains, and they were looking for population support from other places. So the point that I am making is, we have fortunately huge population. Rather than lamenting over it, I would rather say we need to reskill them, educate them, ensure they're healthy, and if need be, export them. And they can bring us remittances like nothing else. So country has been dependent on remittances even in 80s and 90s. Then the 1991 Gulf War took place and Russia disintegrated. And then we had a setback. But then we sent our people to America and Europe and look at the remittances that flow in and the integration that takes place with the rest of the world. So let me conclude this section of my thought process by saying that demographic dividend has to be tapped through reskilling our people, assessing the requirements in the Western world where there is shortage, training them so that when we send them there, they hit the ground running. In this context, I must congratulate the current regime that they have started concepts like Stand Up India, Startup India, where they are even opening up India to entrepreneurs. Not most of the time when we were growing up, it was job-oriented education. And most of our MBAs institutions are producing children for Goldman Sachs and McKinsey. I have been arguing for nearly 5 years now, we need equivalent Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship, where we train our young people to pick up skills to run their own businesses and not wait for Goldman Sachs or McKinsey to do it. And when we were, before the rulers came from outside to rule us, we were the golden sparrow. We had opportunities and we did businesses, and our young children, very, very young, would do very successful businesses. So all I'm trying to say is we need to skill our population. We are lucky we have human resource. There are shortages in the world. We need to identify, reskill them, educate them properly, and start reaping the benefits. Doesn't take more than 2 years if we follow this path. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Professor S.K. Singh, coming back to you now, and let's take this particular aspect forward. Do we, looking at the configuration of our population as it stands right now, do you believe that we need to go into population control measures? Clearly not the China way, but like Professor Charan Singh was talking about Australia incentivizing population control. Is that an option? Should we take that path?
First of all, I would like to mention that our institute has been conducting National Family Health Survey rightly from 92-93. And I have been the opportunity to one of the principal investigators from 98-99. Recently, we have completed National Family Health Survey 5 with the reference period of 2019-20. As per our estimates, except UP, Bihar and Meghalaya, rest of states in our country has already achieved replacement level fertility. When I am saying replacement level fertility, means a woman on an average is bearing 2.1 child throughout her reproductive period on an average by taking some other technical assumptions in consideration. That is why population stabilization is not a problem for our country. That is why any restriction, any measures, any stringent measures is not at all required. Some people, some politicians has been giving some controversial statements for certain religion, certain group of our population. But if they will also look at micro level data, they will find that what Dr. Ajay Shankar mentioned in the beginning, female literacy, female education, women's empowerment, gender issues are the key for our country for balancing the population. Otherwise, if I am saying that population has reached replacement level, it doesn't mean that we are going to stabilize soon. There is a concept of population momentum. All young boys and girls whose population is below age 20 or above 30%, which is varying across states, starting from Kerala to UP, slight differences in that proportion. But they all are going to enter in marriage. They are all going to enter in family building process. That is why our momentum of population growth will be continuing sometimes by 2060. Then only we are going to stabilize, even despite of replacement level fertility. But so far population control is concerned, any drastic measure is not at all required.
Absolutely. Mr. Shankar, coming back to you now, both you and Professor Charan Singh were speaking about skilling India and getting the right kind of skill sets. Do you believe that that is going to go a long way in trying to address some of the problems that we have with regards to unemployment, job creation, and so many other aspects? That if we make our youngsters more ready to face the world, then jobs will automatically come. So, do we need to change our education system as well? As far as the university rankings are concerned, IISc featured as the top research institute in the world, which should bode well for us.
I think we need a new paradigm of thinking regarding development. Our only goal should be job creation and preserving the environment, and we should forget about GDP growth numbers and the state events where we sign MOUs and so many lakh crores of investments are promised. I think we need to focus on jobs and jobs and jobs because we are seeing a social crisis erupting across the country. I had never imagined that proud, socially dominant peasant communities would be agitating across different states for reservation of jobs in government. Government jobs should have become history by now. People should be looking at jobs outside government. Government needs to exist and needs talent, but government should not be the place where every young person should be looking for a job. That is the reality of India today. So we have to bring creation of jobs center stage. Now, how do we do it? That is the debate this country needs. We need a far greater debate than we are having. But one idea which I strongly endorse, and which is that a one development and foreign policy goal should be how do we get Indians to migrate successfully to countries which need labor. Indians are enterprising, they are doing it on their own. So nurses from Kerala can be found all over the world. Sikhs from Punjab would be found all over the world. But that's their individual entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurship of family networks. There is no government policy attempt to train people, skill them, work out, government to government relationships where they can go in large numbers legally, even go on a work permit system where they'll work for some years and come back to India. That is one. And for that, we need to train people to do the things that people in countries where there is labor shortage need. The second is that we must focus on labor-intensive areas of productive activity which can serve the Indian economy as well as the global economy. Now, this has been missing in our focus of development planning and development strategies. So there is no reason why we should not be exporting only garments and not raw cotton or fabric. But it has not been the policy objective of anybody that we should cut down our export of cotton, raw cotton, and fiber and fabric, and export only garments. We should be importing fabric and exporting garments because that is what raises incomes at the lower level. Bangladesh has done a great job. Their per capita income may be overtaking us one of these days, or may have already done so. So we need to focus where jobs can be created, which are productive, for the domestic economy and the global economy, and that space is large enough. But we need a different focus. I mean, there's no reason why we can't open universities and schools where we can get children from the whole world. After all, Indians are, very largely visible in universities in UK and the US, and they earn a lot of money through students who go there to study. So why can't we look at education as something which we focus on, create world-class institutions, create jobs in India for people across the world, and so on and so forth. So we need to think differently, but every year I feel that we are losing valuable time and opportunity, and the social unrest that is brewing in the country in the young is very scary, if you ask me frankly.
Absolutely. It is indeed scary, and there are lakhs of youngsters, in fact, crores of them, who are desperately looking for jobs, and they are all on social media trying to create their own trends and trying to make their voice heard as well. Professor Charan Singh, taking a couple of aspects forward with you. First is the role of universities and the role of education, higher education, in getting the right kind of skill sets for our youngsters, because over the years we've seen that our education has been very theory heavy, and once, even after getting their graduation and getting all their certifications, they're still not job ready. That is one. Secondly, the role of the private sector to skill individuals as well.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very, very good panel that you have brought in, and the points that both my co-panelists have brought on the table are so interesting. Just if Dr. Shrikant doesn't mind, yes, we are reaching the replacement rate of 2.1, but India is like a continent. In Bihar, the birth rate is still 3 per women. Right? In Sikkim, it is 1.1. So the point I'm making is that we will have to follow a little more granular approach to population. And that because the states are so varied. Now, it is true that these could depend on the female literacy rate, also the marriage age of the female, because the fertility period between 18 and say 45, if it reduces, the marriage is pushed later, then the child bearing age is to that extent taken care. There's an economic theory also between childbirth and the number of children a couple can bear. Because if a child is seen as a commodity, it has a cost. Cost in terms of bearing the child, how many days you get out of workforce and don't get your salary, cost of teaching the child, sending to school, into college, keeping the child with you, all that is a cost. So as economic growth takes place, the rearing of a child is costly, and that also brings the urge to have more children down. So growth is very important. I totally endorse the view that you have just mentioned and Mr. Ajay Shankar mentioned, to start exporting. And what is international trade? International trade is in terms of commodities, services, and capital. Why can't it be? India suffered the brain drain at one point of time when all the IITians and IIMs would go to America and be hired by the best global firms. But now India can take the initiative, and embassies of India in various countries can identify the skill gaps in those countries, the manpower gaps in those countries, and tell us, and we can accordingly prepare our children and send them. As far as the university's education system is concerned, if you remember, Frank, where did we import this education system from? Actually speaking, we are the Vedic country, and Vedas were here nearly 5,000 years ago, and we have written scripts also of all this. So we don't have to be taught by others. The modern education system, the schooling, the colleges, the curriculum is all designed by the Western world. And what are they designed for? And when did they grow up? When was these developed? These were developed to serve the Western purpose. what is our purpose, and why don't we have the courage to revamp the education system the way we want it? When I was in school, I was taught all types of soils that are required to produce different types of crops. At my age now, I many times wonder, should I have spent energy in learning the type of soils, the alluvial and this and that? And today with internet, I can have it on my fingertips. So I think the Japanese system is the best, where they incur first 6 years of schooling is basically spent on value system, on ethics, on honesty. And those value systems we need to emphasize on. Next, we need to bring entrepreneurship up. Nobody, why do people clamor for government jobs, as Mr. Ajay Shankar was saying? Because we were following a socialist pattern of society. Most of the jobs were in the public sector. Public sector was considered holy and good. The private sector was considered full of cheats, and anybody who can cheat the country, cheat the people, cheat the government, and not pay taxes. There was a sort of stigma in the private sector. Now we need to work on various fronts. The private sector has to move shoulder to shoulder with the public sector if we have to achieve high growth. The public sector has to shrink back to the major things which the public sector should do, which is national security on the border and inside, judiciary, currency, and coinage. Rest everything should go to the private sector. In the Western world, even defense goods, even the defense planes are prepared in the private sector. Why are we and what are we scared of? So the private sector has to be encouraged. Once the private sector is encouraged, you'll find opportunities open up. Opportunities in entrepreneurship, opportunities in the private sector for jobs, the clamor for PhDs applying for a sweeper job in UP, that will not happen. So the education system has to be revamped to provide skills. The private sector has to be opened up to provide opportunities. And I think, let me reiterate, India doesn't need Indian Institute of Managements. We are not feeding. Let Goldman Sachs can afford a Harvard guy, can afford Chicago and Book. But we need, for our sake, Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship. We need to produce more and more people who are skilled and can create and are self-sustaining and create 1 or 2 or 5 jobs for others. And this has to go hand in hand. So that is why I keep saying, if India is to achieve a $5 trillion economy, that's not the end. We have to compete with America's $21 trillion economy and China's $14 trillion economy. $5 economy is only a milestone. We need a complete model of economic growth, and that is missing. I don't see it anywhere.
Absolutely. All right. Time to get quick closing comments now from all my panelists with the best way forward, starting first with you, Professor S.K. Singh.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with that we will have to develop entrepreneurship, and whatever MSMEs are currently in this country, majority of them during this pandemic period are suffering with a variety of economic crisis. Government should come forward and support them in creating job so that majority of unemployed youth can be employed. That's not feasible through our public sector enterprises. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Shankar?
I think the fundamental change that is required is the change in the incentives as well as the attitudes and mindsets of entrepreneurs in this country, from the biggest to the smallest, and which is that they must look at human beings as a very valuable resource and create jobs and create wealth through creating jobs, rather than follow the very capital intensive path of development that we have been following. And this is a course correction which will need multiple policy instruments from government to bring about the shift. Because there is a whole history of 50 years where entrepreneurs are nervous about employing large number of workers under one roof. They are not comfortable in investing in creating jobs. They would much rather invest in real estate or anything else. So that major shift we need to bring about through a range of policy instruments, so people take pride in the jobs they create, and the annual awards are given to businessmen who created the maximum number of jobs in this country, and they take pride in it.
Absolutely. And Professor Charan Singh, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
I just want to make 2 observations. The show is on population control. And I think we need to increase the female labor force participation. It is too low in India. It is less than 30%. Global average is 60%. When the female labor force participation increases, you will see many changes that will take place that we have been talking about today. Each state will have to make effort. There are states like Kerala where it is very high. There are states like Bihar where it is very low. Each state has to make effort in improving the female labor force participation. The second point that I want to make is, if we have to achieve and we want to achieve our golden sparrow standards, we will have to have vision documents. Each state will have to have their own vision document. The nation will need a vision document. There has to be a paradigm shift. We have lived 70 years in a subservient position. If we want to attain the golden sparrow status once again, we will have to take over. And the vision document should be clearly saying what and where we will be when 100 years of independence is celebrated, when 125, 150 years is celebrated. 75 years we have suffered like that. In 75 years, we can recover ourselves and attain our old golden sparrow status. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the use of state power to control population will not get us anywhere. China, who went down that path, is now suffering. Excessive population growth is a problem, but barring 3 states, India has reached the replacement level fertility, that is an average of 2.1 children per woman. The lack of job creation, however, is causing a major social nightmare, and it has to be addressed at the earliest, or else the demographic dividend will soon become a liability. It is unfortunate that we are still so heavily dependent on the government sector for jobs. The private sector needs to grow and walk shoulder to shoulder with the public sector. Our focus has to be on employment and nothing else. We need to create more entrepreneurs, and our attitudes towards the private sector and their mindset towards employees needs to change. Employers need to start looking towards human beings as a valuable resource. Female labor force participation should increase as well. And finally, from a foreign policy perspective, we need to identify in which country jobs are required and what kind of jobs are required around the world, and train our citizens accordingly. Skilling is everything. Once again, thank you for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all notifications, and then share this content as well. Do follow our social media handles for all the latest updates, and you can also subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharat First team runs a daily Big Picture quiz. Please do participate by going through the description in Big Picture videos. Here are the UPI IDs for those of you who would like to come forward and contribute. Those who do not want to use UPI IDs may use the link that is mentioned in the description box as well. You can just click on it and make the contribution that you would like. A small contribution you will make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. So do continue to show your love and support. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of this video. Please go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.